Well, cannabis is officially legal across Canada tomorrow, but for parents, it creates a bit of a conversation. How do you talk to your kids about pot, and what happens if they get caught underage with marijuana? Joining us now is Toronto Police Officer Chris Body, who is a dad to a 22-year-old and a 23-year-old. We also have Rebecca Eckler. She's the executive editor at Savvy Mom and a mom to a 6 and a 15-year-old. Good to have both of you with us this morning.
Morning.
Interested in your perspectives. Chris, we'll start with you. You're a parent and a police officer. How are you talking to your young people about pot?
Well, it's so important to have an open, honest line of communication with your kids. So even though my kids are older, like they're 22 and 23,
They'll be of legal
said,
age?
Absolutely, they will be. And even them, you know, I want to remind them that there are dangers in smoking pot. And especially, there was even a story out yesterday where some young people feel that you can actually drive a motor vehicle better high than you can sober, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's just as dangerous as driving impaired. So that's one of the things that, wearing my police hat, that's what we want to get out there, that driving high is just as dangerous and has the same ramifications as driving impaired.
So just don't do it. What's one point, Chris, that you want to make sure to make for parents to know when they're talking to their kids, when they're having these conversations right now?
Right. Well, you know, they got to know that, you know, we want to make sure that our kids make safe, positive decisions. So we have to explain to them the dangers of pot, especially the younger kids. There's lots of studies that come out that suggest that youth, especially as your brain develops, using drugs such as marijuana has some dangers as far as developing that cognitive skills that you need.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca, in your column, you wrote about the fact that you are a parent and that you also smoke pot. Now, your kids are underage, 6 and 15. So what kind of discussions are you having or do you plan to have with them?
Well, with my 6-year-old, you know what, he's too young, so that's okay. But my 15-year-old, she's really in the sweet spot of becoming a teen, starting to go to a lot of parties and
pre-parties.
And pre-parties. For me, this is not a discussion, okay, October 17th is tomorrow, let's sit down and have a conversation. This is a conversation I've been having with her since she's probably about 12 years old. And I'm very transparent. I think transparency between parents and kids is so important these days.
Because they'll call you on it if you're not.
Yes. Yeah. The kids are smarter than we know. So I do tell her, like, if she asks me questions about it, have you tried it? I'll say yes, and I'll give her a good example, you know, when it was a good experience for me, and I also give her a bad example when, you know, once I ended up in the hospital, not because you know, it was a medical, like I was going to die, but I did get a little paranoid and worried, so I took myself to the hospital. So I tell her the good, and I tell her the bad. And another problem is that a lot of kids these days, as I'm sure you know, with mental health issues, a lot of kids are on medication. Mm-hmm. So we don't also know how, if they're already on medication, how smoking marijuana is going to... So, yeah, so right. So mostly it's about talking to her about safety, and if something goes wrong at a party, how to get out, if you're feeling peer pressured, how to get out of that situation. And then with my 6-year-olds, it's all about kind of like hiding it, like making sure that it is in a lockbox, that it is high. Because when it comes to edibles, for example, you know, if your 6-year-old sees you with a gummy,
right,
they might think it's a gummy.
Right.
So for parents, I think with younger children who enjoy occasionally using, make sure that is tucked away. Yeah. One
of the conversations in talking even with parents that I know is, do you broach it from an alcohol perspective, meaning this is something that is now legal, you know, you've seen your father and I have a drink, but we don't do it to excess, there's nothing illegal there, or do you take the tobacco route, which is, there's more of a negative stigma, there's very negative health effects from smoking. What's the angle do you take? Do you take the cigarette angle or do you take the alcohol angle?
Danger-wise, I take the alcohol because, like you said, I don't want my teenager getting in a car with someone who is impaired, even if she's the passenger.
Yeah, ultimately, all of it's unhealthy, we know, whether it's drinking, smoking, or doing any kind of drug. So I would just, you know, remind our kids that there's other options. You know, a lot of kids will just decide to go to drugs because they're curious or they want to fit in. But, you know, there's other things that young people can do, you know, exercise, go for a walk, rather than having to experiment with drugs in the first place, in my opinion.
They're not necessarily going to do that, though. Chris, you and I both know if they're getting together at a time for a party, nobody's going for a walk.
Right. Right, well, 100%.
They might be walking around the block.
Right.
But I mean, what you want to remind our kids is that, you know, if they're the minimum age across the country is 18. In Ontario here, it's 19.
Yeah.
But, you know, you have to remind, you know, we want kids to follow the law and follow the rules. If
Right.
it's okay for parents to say, oh, okay, Johnny, you're only 15, but it's okay to smoke drugs, then what other rules are they going to gloss over, right? Whether it's driving infractions or even worse. So I think we just want to remind kids is that, you know, it is illegal. If you're going to try it, you know, do so at your own risk. But, you know, as parents, I don't think we can condone young people breaking the law, which virtually is what they're doing.
And there's also, you know, all the cutesy mummy juice. Oh, I'm watching my kid at soccer and I'm drinking mummy juice.
Right.
Personally, I'm not a drinker, so I don't like waking up with a hangover. I don't like getting the spins at night. So to help me sleep, I, you know, occasionally take like a pot pill. And, you know, I wake up feeling fine. I would never do it during the day at work. I'm not that type who could even manage to do that. But yeah, but in my experience, all my mummy friends are kind of turning from alcohol more to the marijuana.
Right.
Because, yeah, it's
It'll be
really
interesting to see
interesting.
what happens and continue all of those conversations because, as you said, just because it's legal tomorrow doesn't mean that that's the only day we have the conversation.
No, you can have it for the next 2 years, 3 years,
Chris
10
and Rebecca,
years.
thank you guys both so much for
Awesome.
being here today.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
Hear
us.
so
both your